Allen & Company wishes OOIDA and all members a safe, healthy, and joyous holiday season.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
We've been delving into the top trucking stories of 2024, and among the big topics were EPA, emission rules, and electric vehicles. We'll talk a bit more about those topics today with Jamie Jones of Landline Magazine. Traffic congestion isn't just annoying, it's also very costly, and it's never been worse, according to the American Transportation Research Institute. Jeffrey Short of ATRI explains. The topic of fraud might sound like a broken record, but being on the ball can make all the difference. We speak with Brent Hutto from TruckStop about some tips and tricks to avoid getting scammed. And finally, electronic message signs are among the common sights along our highways, but Marty Ellis says that sometimes they don't work so well. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. And now, here's Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. We've been delving into the top trucking issues of 2024 over the past several days, and I doubt we went more than a few days without mentioning the EPA or emission rules in electric vehicles and trucks. It's been a huge talking point over the past several months, and we're going to talk a bit more about it now with Jamie Jones, managing editor of Landline Magazine. Jamie, thanks for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome, Scott.
No doubt. This was a top trucking story of 2024. We could go any number of ways with this because we had the EPA emission standards. We've had states, basically putting these new rules into effect or looking to put them into effect. This was a huge talking point and a huge concern for the trucking industry.
It always is, because every time that there has been a clampdown on trucking in the name of emission reduction, the manufacturing industry of trucking has never been able to fully comply with good quality trucks at the deadline. You can only mandate so much. There is no magic wand that, we've just been sitting on this technology for all these years. And
you want it now? Okay, sure. Here you go.
Here, let me just pull it off the shelf.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. And, it's always, I think, everybody can agree it's good to be good stewards of the environment, and to reduce waste and, pollution where you can.
Sure.
So that's neither here nor there, because if an electric truck with zero tailpipe emission, and we'll come back to that in just a second, it fits your business model and you have the ability to charge your truck and make a profitable decision to do that, fine. That's your decision. Mm-hmm. It's these mandates that get things out of whack real fast. And that's why it's been met with such significant pushback.
Yeah, this is a classic cart before the horse situation, a classic free market versus, nudging the industries in the way you want them to go. I think if you were to ask a random truck driver out there, they would say that the EPA has overstepped here. And is pushing this way too fast. And we've seen, the Phase 3 greenhouse gas emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles. These are going into effect. We've seen the advanced clean trucks on a state level that are going into effect, any day now. And it's raising real concerns about how, especially small business truckers, are going to keep up with this. If you're mandating that they continue to update, they're not going to be able to do it. I know that's something that OOIDA has talked about. You're basically regulating these companies out of business if you continue to push them this way. So we've seen a bunch of steps backward, I think, with regard to that. On the other side, we've seen all these legal challenges, which are kind of gumming up the works. And we're going to continue to see that moving forward, in 2025 and beyond.
Right. So when you talk about, to get back to the small business truckers and the impact that this mandate would have, Ryder actually did a study into electric vehicles, and the cost alone is staggering. I mean, you're looking at, $200,000 a year, I think, was just the bulk cost increase for one truck alone.
Right.
And then you had productivity that they looked at. And for each diesel-powered truck on the road, it was going to take 2 electric trucks, 2 drivers to replace that. So when we talk about zero tailpipe emissions, that's what's coming out of the truck. But when you put more of them on the road, the other pollution they create, the pollution that was created building them and manufacturing those batteries and everything else, there's not been enough of a robust look at what that upstream effect on pollution is before you get to this zero tailpipe. And we are very careful to say zero tailpipe. A lot of the press releases we get, everything that we get promoting this calls them zero emission vehicles. But that's not the case when you look upstream in the manufacturing.
Cumulatively,
yes,
right.
The total effect. And then the sheer congestion on the roads from more trucks to do the same amount of work. It's just really scary. And then you have the lack of infrastructure, so it would have to be regional and local trucks only because there's no way that this would work in a long-haul model. And then even you have cities who are being approached by local companies saying, hey, we want to put 30 electric trucks in our fleet. We need the power for it. And they're like, this got to be a joke.
Yeah.
Because that is literally going to require more power than it takes to power the whole city.
Right.
So, there's so many of those problems. So it's not surprising to see the state level emission standards get challenged. Some of them have gotten a little out of hand. There's one that actually, in my opinion, is a little out of hand. It's a lawsuit accusing truck manufacturers of conspiring to force the adoption of electric trucks. When you talk to the Manufacturers Association, they're saying, no, we can't pull this off.
Right. Well, we don't want this either.
Yeah. So, in the legal world, they're throwing everything they can against the wall right now to try and stop this.
Yeah.
I do fully expect once President-elect Trump is sworn into office that we will see a rollback here.
Absolutely.
I would be literally shocked if electric truck mandates made it through, the first 100 days of his of his administration. So, but again, like many, 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 many other issues, it's one that we need to continue to push back on. And really, I think something that OOIDA and Landline does very well is we kind of force the agencies to remember history and how many problems there were with the 1002 engines, the 04 mandate, the 07, the 2010 mandates. We had so many problems, and it was a catastrophe. We barely recovered from that. So now is not the time to go charging foolhardy into a whole other realm that we're not prepared for either.
Yeah, the free market will figure this out one
100%.
way or another. We're going to get there, but again, putting the cart before the horse is probably not going to serve anybody well at this point in time. 2025 will be interesting on this front with everything that we're expecting to happen. And Jamie, we know you, among others, will keep us updated. We appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome, Scott.
That was Jamie Jones of Landline Magazine. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. We have some breaking news for you. We reported just yesterday that a federal appeals court had overruled the lower court and put back in place a requirement that small businesses file beneficial ownership information with the federal government. Yesterday, a different panel of that same appeals court overruled that, and that means for now, small businesses do not have to file that information. You can learn more by reading the story at landline.media. Again, that's at landline.media. Next, Jeffrey Short of ATRI discusses what that group found regarding traffic congestion. Ashley Blackford speaks with Brent Hutto of Truck Stop about some tips and tricks to avoid getting scammed. And Marty Ellis discusses the problem of when electronic highway signs don't work properly. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. Traffic congestion isn't just annoying, although it's definitely that. It's also a time suck and a gigantic waste of money. And it's never been worse, according to a new report from the American Transportation Research Institute, which found that traffic congestion on U.S. highways added nearly $109 billion in costs to the trucking industry in 2022. Joining us with the details, Jeffrey Short, ATRI's Vice President. Jeffrey, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
So we got a lot of ground to cover here with this report, and I think it uncovers a lot of questions and a lot of interesting aspects of this topic here. But let's start with the study itself. Can you tell me just a little bit about why ATRI looks at congestion costs in particular?
Well, congestion obviously is a very frustrating thing for everyone who uses the roadways, especially in urban areas. For a truck driver, it may not be your origin, might not be your destination, but if you're going through a major city during rush hour in particular, you're likely going to experience some congestion, and that congestion can really eat into the bottom line. It takes away available hours of service. It could make parking more difficult if there's some level of uncertainty involved with the congestion, and it's just a very costly problem, as our report showed. So as background, this is ongoing research that we have on the cost of congestion. Our most recent update here is for the year 2022. That's because of when data is released from the federal government, in particular on volumes. That's one component that we need. So the cost of congestion right now stands at more than $108 billion. This is the highest it's ever been since we've been doing this. Our first study was in 2012. ATRI's Research Advisory Committee back in 2012 ranked measuring the cost of congestion, doing an ongoing analysis of congestion costs as a top research priority, and we've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, let's start with that big number that you mentioned there. Basically, I'll round up to $109 billion. That's what you found, the amount of money that is costing the trucking industry back in 2022. $109 billion, when we look at a big number like that, it can be kind of hard to put it into context. But how did you come up with that figure exactly? Talk about, everything that you factored in to get to that number.
So what we do is we look at the entire roadway system in the U.S. We started back in 2012 through 2016 looking at every single roadway segment in the U.S., and we've since indexed through that the speeds, the number of trucks impacted, and the trucking industry costs overall per mile and per hour. So we focus in on those segments of roadway where speeds are going below 55 miles per hour. And we look at those speeds on segments of roadway by hour of day, day of week, so that we're ultimately calculating up how much time is spent with lower speeds. Then we look at the number of trucks impacted, and that's through volume data that we go out there and collect from various sources, one of which is the Federal Highway Administration. So once we know how many trucks are impacted at each location and what speed levels they are being brought down to, we can then measure the congestion. Once you have a congestion measurement, you then go to the trucking industry costs. And the cost to operate a truck per hour has certainly gone up, especially since 2020. We've seen a lot of inflation. And hence, we had costs in 2020, congestion costs probably it was around $77 billion, and it has gone up all the way to $108 billion by 2022. Of course, COVID played a role in 2020 in the lower congestion costs, but still, this is a massive increase in cost to the industry over just 2 years.
Yeah, it's a really big jump. And what I found interesting, among other things in this report, you found that people are actually spending fewer hours in traffic. The average speeds and bottlenecks were up very slightly, but still up. So when we see congestion costs going up, is it mostly due to the operational costs that truck drivers are seeing out there and battling with?
That is the biggest piece of this puzzle, certainly. The cost of trucks has gone up, the cost of tires, the cost of fuel in 2022 was at a peak, and that certainly influenced it. And the cost of a driver's time. Drivers are certainly earning more money than they were prior to COVID, and that factors into it absolutely, as well as, cost of benefits, health benefits for drivers. Just overall, we've seen increases across the board for operational costs.
Yeah, and what you found on an individual basis, again, I think $109 billion can be kind of hard to put into context, but for each individual driver out there, you figured it's about $7,500 more they're paying per truck due to congestion. Is that fair to say? Basically, $7,500 is the cost of of doing business in traffic. Is that kind of safe to say?
That is correct. It's $7,500 that is wasted every year stuck in congestion. That's money that could be earned. That's money that's lost with, let's say, fuel. You're just sitting there burning fuel in stop-and-go traffic. That fuel at 55 miles per hour, it would be much more economical, if you will, to move freight at 55 miles per hour than just sitting there and getting terrible gas mileage, fuel economy.
Yeah. And another reason we've seen a lot of people just sit, basically not work because it's not worth it. And I think this kind of speaks to that as well. On an individual level, obviously, that is a huge burden, $7,500 in extra expenses due to congestion. But your study also looked at the wider implications for the entire economy. As we know, everything is connected here. And when you looked at that, when you looked at congestion and the economy at large, what did you find?
Well, for the economy overall, how many hours of delay did we experience? That was almost 1.2 billion. And looking at 1.2 billion hours of delay, that works out to be about 435,000 truck drivers just sitting idle for an entire year. So that in itself is just very interesting to think about. Across the entire driver population, that's how many drivers are literally would be sitting there doing nothing for an entire year. Certainly that delay is spread across many, many more drivers, but it speaks to the difficulty of this problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. ATRI is so focused on solutions, which is one of the many great things that your institute does. On this particular issue, I'm not sure anybody has the answers about what to do about congestion. But I guess my question is, what now? What do you hope people do with this information from this report? Can it maybe contribute to finding solutions to traffic congestion and everything that comes along with it?
I think this highlights the need for investment in infrastructure. Obviously, the nation's highways are where the trucking industry does its business. These highways are out there to facilitate the efficient movement of freight from warehouses to manufacturers, from farms to markets. And when traffic volumes across these freight corridors go beyond the highway capacity, obviously there's an issue. and we need more capacity. Looking back, we started building the interstate system back in the 1950s. It was a great idea. It has certainly worked out from an economic perspective, but the system hasn't continued to grow since the 1950s. The U.S. population has increased several times over. There's far more economic activity, many times over more economic activity, but interstate capacity, you look at some cities out there that have grown and grown and grown, but we're still looking at 1950s, 1960s infrastructure. That really needs to change. The infrastructure needs to be modernized to facilitate it, in particular, the movement of freight, which is so critical to the economy. At the same time, there are even efforts to stop the improvement of existing highway infrastructure, which works counter to the argument that we should be making infrastructure better. There are folks who are protesting against highway infrastructure improvements on Interstate 80 in California, Interstate 5 in Oregon. They're saying, we should not improve these roadways. We should not put money into improving these bottlenecks. And there are even efforts out there to just remove sections of the interstate system altogether, which, in my opinion, degrades the system overall. You look at Minnesota, there's discussion of removing portions of I-94 in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and New York State up in Syracuse, removal of Interstate 81. Now, we have the majority of miles traveled by truck on the interstate system. 57% of truck miles are driven on the interstate system. That's simply because trucks operate better. They're more efficient. They can move more miles when there isn't, let's say, stoplights, right turns, left turns. The highway system is critical to moving freight efficiently. The highway system just needs to have enough lanes, needs to take care of those bottlenecks. We need to put money into the system to make it better.
Yeah, for sure. Jeffrey, I've run out of questions. Anything I forgot to ask you or anything else maybe that jumps out to you about the report that you want people to know about?
Well, I definitely would emphasize that the majority of this congestion is in urban areas. These are places where goods are going to, where they're coming from. These are the big distribution points for goods in the U.S. And certainly there's an emphasis out there, at least across the past half decade, maybe full decade, on moving away from cars, moving away from trucks, and focusing on, let's say, bicycle lanes and that sort of thing. But in reality, if you want to have food on the table, you need to facilitate the movement of trucks. And slowing it down with bottlenecks, that only leads to increased costs, less fuel efficiency, etc.
Yeah, well said. Jeffrey, appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon when the next report comes out. And until then, happy holidays and take care.
All right, great. Thanks, Scott. Happy holidays.
That was Jeffrey Short of the American Transportation Research Institute, and we thank him for his time. If you'd like to check out the Institute's full cost of congestion to the trucking industry report, you can do that on ATRI's website, truckingresearch.org. There's a whole host of other research there that you might find helpful or interesting as a professional truck driver. Again, that website is truckingresearch.org. Time now for a break, but don't go far. We've got more Landline Now right around the corner, so stick around.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibertech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibertechtvd.com.
truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide.
Vendor choice. Owner-operators rejoice.
Truckdown.com.
Landline Now, welcome back. It may sound like a broken record, but the issue of fraud is one that continues to go around. I recently spoke with Brent Hutto from Truck Stop about the issue and what's being done to help mitigate the problem.
Gosh, this is such an important topic because cargo theft, freight payment theft has been a part of our market, since the beginning. Criminals have been stealing things since the dawn of man. So it seems like. But in October of 2022, it went from like normal, where everybody's kind of managing it, to about 400% more than normal. And it got the attention of the entire United States freight network because, boy, it wasn't just your average, hey, somebody getting pulled over side of the road or a truck stop or something like that. It was organized crime. And it just changed. It just dramatically changed. And so many new approaches to mitigating or offsetting or defeating or stopping or hindering freight theft and payment theft had to be put in place. And so these groups that have been around forever, these associations and even these technologies really started picking up steam into developing high-end products that can be implemented, data that can be evaluated, and inertia by people, by leaders in the marketplace on how do we identify it, how do we identify where the theft is, how do we understand how it happens, how do we work towards stopping it before it ever starts, and then how do you work through it if you've been a victim of it. And so I was down in Fort Lauderdale. In October, I was in California talking at the Travelers Insurance, who have a really, really interesting approach to defeating the theft. They even have their own internal investigation division, and Verisk, which is CargoNet Verisk, which is the big sort of leader in the market. I was out there in October, and then just 2 days ago, I was down in Fort Lauderdale at the Transported Assets Protection Association, called TAPA, T-A-P-A, where it's all these leaders in the market, a lot of insurance companies that have to insure against this risk, and police and ex-police that have these efforts towards defeating it, stopping it, making sure you're aware of it. And it was just a fascinating opportunity to learn on where cargo happens and where cargo theft happens, how it happens, what are the classifications of it, even all the way down to like pilferage of freight off a truck and all these things. And so it was just really amazing to see the effort that's going into defeating this, because it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help our industry. It certainly does. It just ruins an owner-operator's business. And so our entire industry is now focused on how do we stop this as well as possible.
You mentioned, just, of course, theft has been going on for decades and centuries.
Yeah.
How have you seen things change in the course of the time that you've been in the trucking industry when it comes to cargo theft? Obviously it's gotten worse.
Yeah. With the advent of the internet and the advent of you now have a online life and your business exists online and you communicate online and everything's digital and automatic and emailed, and there's not as much just person-to-person handshaking. It still happens in our industry, is necessary in our industry, but as things have gotten faster and faster because of the internet and automation, there's more opportunity that for these thieves to be able to, one person to do more damage or one group to do more damage. And what I've seen change is, you used to think about cargo theft, or somebody got pulled over on the side of the road, or they broke down the side of the road and their cargo was stolen, or they got to a truck stop in a questionable area and they went in to use the bathroom and they came back, their truck was missing. Or they might have had some freight stolen off of a truck somewhere at a dock somewhere or something like that. And that was really kind of the normal ways in which things were stolen. But now it's very different. You've got straight cargo theft, which is it's stolen at truck stops, it's stolen in parking lots, roadside parking, drop lots, anywhere cargo could be left unattended. And that's just straight cargo theft. And that's most of the theft. That's still most of the theft because, with with 900 million plus shipments in America, that's a lot of places for freight to sit, right? So then you've got things like sort of the new approach is called strategic cargo theft, where they're stealing an identity, which is a big deal if you're an owner-operator or a broker as well. You've got like fictitious pickups, where the person picking it up is not the person you think they are, but you think that they're the person you think they are. So fictitious pickups, still got double brokering going on, where it's supposed to go on one truck, it goes on another, and the person putting it on the other truck ends up being a criminal and it going somewhere else. You've got fraudulent carriers that happen in the marketplace where, say, like for instance, MC numbers that there's a big marketplace out there for the criminals trying to buy the master contractor number, and then they say, well, in order to run your, in order to really maximize this purchase of your business, Mr. Owner Operator, I need your user identity, I need your login password, I need your bank account information, I need all this, and then they just go and they don't just ruin the day of the cargo owners, they ruin the day of the owner operator because they ruin the identity of the owner operator. So fraudulent carriers, combination of all these methods go along, and then you got something that I wasn't even thinking about until I was at this conference down there in Fort Lauderdale, pilferage, which is basically stealing partial amounts of the freight or all the freight, but pilferage is stealing the freight, and it's adjusting bill of ladings, making sure that the bill of lading that you picked up at is the same bill of lading that's being delivered. You'd be surprised how many times those can be altered, and how theft, like cross-dock theft, or a bill of lading was signed for 8 pallets off of a truck, and it sat in the warehouse, and actually only 4 pallets came off that truck because the other 4 pallets went somewhere else. But because no one's really paying attention, it's signed for, but it doesn't actually make the dock. So there's these three ways going on, and what's reported in the marketplace, Ashley, is probably only about, the experts say it's about maybe 1/4 of actually what's going on in the marketplace.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big. Yeah.
What I know you've probably heard many stories. What's, I guess, the craziest kind of theft story you've heard? Can you think of one?
Oh, goodness. Well, here's the craziest one I heard. The craziest one I heard was, and think about how hard this is. Stealing stuff from like a truck stop, hard, but, there's a lot of it, not that difficult. Stealing weapons from the Department of Defense, very difficult. There was a group that stole 7 truckloads of weapons from the Department of Defense on a military base.
Wow.
And by the time the military base realized they had put them on the wrong truck, even though it showed up with the right information on it, the bill of lading looked right, the person who was actually was moving this freight had faked everything, faked every single piece of it, because they had been watching for months on what trucks went in, what trucks went out, what time of the day did it do it, how did it move. So they had everything set up, and they struck all at once. They had 7 truckloads of weapons, and the military was able to track them as far as Canada, and then they disappeared. In other words, because they have to have tracking on them, and all of a sudden it got close to Canada border, all the tracking went away, and they went through Canada off to some other country. That's the craziest one I've heard of. But there's when you look at the numbers on this thing, when I said numbers about it, there's like just straight thefts, about 3,600 loads that have been stolen this year. And like I said, those are the ones that are reported, just reported in the marketplace, because so many people don't report. They just feel like what's going to happen now. And certainly on pilferage, it's low. Even if people even know it happens when the actual freight is stolen itself. So the idea, and here's the thing with it, Ashley, and I appreciate, we as Truck Stop want to talk about this over and over and over, because we can't talk about it enough, because awareness is the most important thing, that the owner-operator's aware, that the fleet's aware, that the broker's aware, that the shippers are aware of this. And so we want to continue to talk about it, because like I said, that's reported is only a portion of what's going on in the marketplace.
Now, you mentioned, the story of the weapons. It kind of seems like if I'm thinking I'm an owner-operator, like I don't have a chance. Like even if I do take that, extra few seconds, which of course they should do.
Right.
But what are some red flags? What are some things that if somebody is booking a load or an owner-operator, what should they look out for?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Here's the thing. First and foremost, and you and I have talked about this a couple times, what I would encourage every owner-operator is know the brokers you do business with. Know the shippers you do business with. And most owner-operators are doing business with brokers because they have the freight of the shipper. A few are doing them with shippers, direct with shippers, but shippers don't typically like to do business with somebody who only has one truck because it's more work for them, and I get it. But the idea is, first and foremost, and just know who you're doing business with, and they need to know you. So if there's any uneasiness or something that's off, you'll know it because you know the person. So, and the problem is the average owner-operator that works in the spot market works with 37 different brokers a year, and they're typically not the same brokers every year. So you're working with there's 52 weeks in a year, so you're working with a lot of different entities out there. So what you need to know is, does everything always match up? Just first and foremost, is the information you're receiving about the load, is it accurate? Is everything accurate on it? Is what's being transported accurate? Is what you're calling on, did the phone number that you called 2 months ago, if you're doing business with the same company, is it the same phone number that was on where you selected it off a load board or wherever you found it within however the offer was given to you? Does the email address that sent it to you, is it the same email address that you've gotten it from before? Is the .com the .com, or did the .com change to .net? And maybe that's not even the company. If you can go on the FMCSA and do a backward search into the broker that you're doing business with, does their licensing number from the FMCSA, does that match the number that they're giving to you? Making a phone call and talking to a person, making sure that all of the contact information is correct. All those things should line up. Making sure that however the communication that came to you made sense. Was the email address correct? Was the information on there that you're looking at, the communication, was it in just the normal type of communication that you get from that broker? So another thing that happens is when you, and you probably got these when you're getting a text message or something where some prince from some country is trying to tell you they're trying to launder $4 million. And their English is all really off, or they're sending you something about something in your company, because I get these, that somebody in my company, a high-up person in our company, needs something from me, but the English is not correct. So there's just words that are off, and so they go, probably somebody smishing, which is a text message, is wrong, or phishing, which is an email. So you just got to make sure you're looking for those things. And I think in the end, and another thing that you and I've talked about before, which is this is a huge red flag, huge. Everything should match up. So if you go Atlanta to Dallas, and it's usually $1,900, and then you go on Truck Stop and you look in the lane, and today it's $1,900 again. That's the going market right now on a Thursday at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and that's the amount. And yet today's rate is $2,800 that they're offering, but the marketplace that Truck Stop tells you, out of hundreds of thousands of rates that are in the marketplace, tells you that it should be $1,900, should be the starting amount that you negotiate at, and we always want you to negotiate. That should tell you that's a huge red flag. Mm-hmm. There is no reason someone should be paying $2,800 to get something moved. Now, if they are, kudos for you, but you better do a ton of investigation into this, and don't say yes to anything until you realize, that it's there's a legitimate reason it's moving for that, and you've got all the legitimate documentation lined up, because I tell you, that's the number one way they get you. They put the shiny object out there, and that shiny object is a really, really good rate. And you've been in the market a while. You're an owner-operator. You've been in the market a while. You should know that to look in the right places, to understand your rate, understand the location, understand the information, and then even like I said before, call in to Truck Stop, call in our department. If you think there's something fishy, we'll investigate it with you to make sure. You may not get that load that day, but you also won't lose the freight that day. You won't lose the payment that day, and you will have protected yourself. So those are kind of the red flags that you need to look at. And we at Truck Stop are we communicate all the time. We have an entire blog about fraud, how to mitigate fraud in the marketplace. That just go to that. And I know that Landline posts these things too. So just go and inform yourself.
That was Brent Hutto with Truck Stop. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Every week, we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. When we think about the forward march of technology, we likely first think of the cell phone in our pocket. But there are signs of it everywhere on the road, from electronic billboards with rotating messages to the electronic warning signs along highways, especially in urban areas. But sometimes, those in particular don't work so well.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you doing?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
I'm doing great, absolutely doing great, and hope you're having a good time and you had a good Christmas.
Absolutely, I hope you did too. Did Santa come?
Santa always comes.
Exactly.
Santa has a big credit card. Santa's been busy.
Yeah, it seems like it goes all year round. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's true. That big credit card gets some pretty heavy skid marks on it. Anyway, let's talk about some of the issues you're hearing about. And I know that you took a little break over the holidays, so it's been a while. But something came up regarding people and trouble understanding road signs. And I'm kind of curious what road signs in particular people are having difficulty with.
Well, some of the time out here on the road, and some of the time you don't kind of pay attention to some of these signs. You're just, driving along, singing your song and doing your deal. But all of a sudden, in the back of your head, you're saying, what did that say about trucks? And because they try to put so much information on some of these signs that unless you're going 20 mile an hour on the interstate, you're not going to be able to read that whole thing and absorb it all. And that's one of the challenges that I've talked to a lot of folks out here, when when we've talked about the understanding of English and that. And I know how it is with me, okay? And some of the time, I cannot comprehend it all going 55, 65, 75 mile an hour down a road. And if I can't, and I've been, using this language as long as I can remember, I really feel bad that, for the people that are learning our language. And so if I'm having that struggle, you've got to anticipate that other people that are learning our language in our country, that they have to have how many times worse situation than I do. And if you're driving a truck, you don't have a whole lot of time you can't stop and walk back and go look at it. You can't, go down 5 miles, turn around and go back to read the sign. It's some of I really get aggravated sometimes at the people that make these signs up. It's like, we need it pretty well, kind of set it in, like a short of amount of words that you can, no trucks, Route 226 or whatever that number, whatever it is. Don't have a big, long explanation of this many feet long or this weight, and you're sitting there trying to figure this out, going that fast, going down the road, unless you're going to put up a whole lot of those signs to repeat it. Our folks out there that are doing the signage, I think they need to do a little bit better job.
I would agree. And, we're talking here, of course, about these electronic signs that change over time because I think we've all mastered stop. So that's a road sign we don't have too many problems with. But
that's what that means?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's the same shape in other languages, in other countries. So we should all know stop. But I've run into this case where I'm, going down the road and another vehicle gets between me and that electronic sign, and I can't see the darn thing. And I'm trying to look around the other vehicle to see what this thing is saying in case it's like bridge out.
Right.
And that to me is one of my little pet peeves is and then of course by then it's flashed back to just telling you how many minutes to the next exit. you know?
Right. Yeah. It's past the point where, you missed whatever it was. And later on, you're thinking, okay, was that something important that I might want to know? Is the road out? Is the bridge out type of thing ahead? That's why I don't think we do a good enough signage. We don't do a very good job with signage, I should say. And I really like when they put it in the lane that okay, this lane stays on I-10 or goes to I-5. When you have that, it's really plain and simple. But I don't know if you've noticed that in some of those instances, the printed signs, the overhead signs, they're not necessarily lined up with the lane correctly. So you think you're in that correct lane, and all of a sudden you're not. And that's how, we get guys changing lanes at the last second. And now, granted, some of them, are just jerks, and they're going to do that because they know where they're going. But other times it's like, oh, there's my exit. I need to get off there.
Yeah. Been there, done that. Well, let's go on to another topic here. And this is one that we talked a little bit about last time, but honestly, it deserves a little bit more of a hearing. And that is when the GPS lies. And there's a lot of instances where that happens. And you mentioned, of course, when there's a detour and the GPS hasn't caught up yet. And of course, you have all other sorts of instances where these things aren't quite correct. Are there particular instances that you're hearing about from people?
Yeah, it's part of it is they're not being updated as often as I think they should be. Whether that you have to take your GPS out and actually hook it up to your computer and download it, or if it's over the air and you just need to hook up the Wi-Fi to it. But that's part of the problem. But I believe that most of the big GPS makers don't do a good job of getting them updated as quick as they should. There's some of them you can put in comments on, okay, the speed limit changed in this area. Even when you do that, and 3 months later go down that same stretch of highway, it's not fixed. So I think we do need to somehow look at that and figure that out. And then, of course, when you're like in a big city, if you're relying totally on that ELD, I've had it happen where it doesn't have the capability of getting around those buildings, so it's not catching the satellites or whatever the heck it, the GPS signals. And so it's recalculating, and you're turning right when maybe you should be turning left. And I've had that happen several times, in a downtown area, Kansas City or Chicago, or, somewhere there's a lot of tall buildings around.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, there's another one. And I always think of this one because I was with you one time when you ran into an instance of this, which is when you don't know the clearance of a bridge or it's a low bridge, that in itself, the GPS really needs to tell a trucker, especially if those bridges are high enough. But I think we've run into a case with at least one state where they kept paving over, and the sign was no longer correct because they had raised the pavement too much.
Yep, absolutely. It happens out there.
Absolutely. Well, Marty, we're running out of time here. Any other final words before you head off into the sunset?
Yeah, guys, I hope you have a great new year. Hopefully you're not out driving and, around the people that may be drinking and driving. So be careful about that. And just hope you're celebrating with people that you want to, or maybe you're out there making money, whatever works for you. Hope you're having a good time and a safe time.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That's our program for today. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad.
A son.
A husband.
Wife.
I'm a writer.
Photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars. Fishing.
My kids.
Chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.